But I want to get started by telling you who I would put on college football's Mount Rushmore. And then I'm going to bring in Producer Cat because I want to hear what you thought as I asked this question. Man, it might have been 6 weeks or 2 months ago, but we got some great responses. But I'm just going to get us started here. I wrote about Lewis Hamilton for Fox Sports last month in the month of May. It's one of my favorite pieces, like 4,000 words. Please go read it if you have time. There's a bit about me in there. But this had me thinking about the greatest athlete of all time, the greatest coaches of all time. I genuinely believe that Lewis Hamilton is the greatest athlete of all time, and I could really back that up. But who would I put on an F1 Mount Rushmore became who would I put on a college football Mount Rushmore. So I'm going to go through all four because there are only 4 spots. There are no tiers to Rushmore. There's only one mountain. That's how that works. Okay. So first, I got Eddie Robinson. Okay. So Eddie Robinson is black college football, period. Like, I can make a great argument for Jake Gaither as well. I can make another one for, my goodness, I could keep going about black college football forever, quite honestly, but I'm not going to, because when you think about who did what and longevity, it's really difficult to make college football history without Eddie Robinson. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite quotes about the way that black college football was being played before integration was that they were doing it behind God's back, which is great because there's so many great players that you just don't know about because there was no TV or print in some of these areas, or the only areas that they were being covered by black newspapers. But Eddie Robinson coached at Grambling from about 1941 to about the mid-90s, early 2000s, really is what I think of as growing up to know what it is to be a Grambling Tigers, to also know what it means to play black college football. His record is ridiculous. Like, he has the things that he was able to accomplish throughout his life and the things that he had seen throughout his life, I dare say we'll never see again. But the one that really resonates for me is when they give away the Coach of the Year award, it bears his name. Okay. So every time you hear of a National Coach of the Year or the Football Writers Association, it bears Eddie Robinson's name, or as some folks just simply called him, Rob. Next one for me was Nick Saban. It's really difficult to talk about college football the last 25 years without mentioning Nick Saban and what he's been, not just at Alabama, but LSU, Michigan State, on down the line, starting out as defensive back, coming out of a small town in West Virginia where he worked for his dad at his gas station and made good on that. I also can't really think of a more dominant college football coach ever, honestly. Then there's Barry Switzer for me, because the king is just that in the state of Oklahoma. When you think about OU football, you don't really think about Bob Stoops. You don't really think about Bud Wilkinson. You think about Barry Switzer because of his colorful personality, the way that he was able to recruit, and let's not forget winning national championships at Oklahoma, running the bone, really putting out some of the old-timers' favorite college football teams. And then for me, the last one is Jimmie Johnson, who is my favorite college football coach. Like, I would play for Jimmie Johnson. The stories that are told about Jimmie Johnson, the way in which his players were allowed to play, the way in which he decided to coach the team, saying, I'm going to treat you all fair, but I'm not going to treat you all the same. He only asked him to go win. Be as flamboyant and as fun as you would very much like to be. Just go win. I'll take care of the rest. And he did. He made Miami really a place where kids from South Florida wanted to go to school. And that's not an easy reach at a private institution that really, really loves to hold up its academic standards, but also one in which other teams were scared to play Miami. My favorite Miami game that Jimmie Johnson coached has to be the game against Arkansas, and I believe 1988. Okay. So Jimmie had gone to Arkansas. He played football there. He was on the 1964 national championship team. He coached defensive line there, coached as a defensive coordinator there, and he was passed over for Lou Holtz when he thought he should have the job. Ends up going to work for Jackie Sherrill at Pitt, goes to Oklahoma State, where he also was coaching the team. He worked with Barry Switzer at Oklahoma for a little while, but then that job came open again. He got passed over again. And this time, when he had an opportunity to schedule Arkansas at a time when they lost the game and Arkansas had lost the game, he ran up the score, 51-7. That 7, Arkansas didn't score until there were 3 minutes left in the game, which is another way of saying Jimmie never forgot, and his players wanted to vindicate him for what he had done in choosing Miami and really wanted to stick it to Arkansas. I want to play for that kind of a coach. All right, but the reason that we wanted to do this segment is I wanted to hear what you, the fans, had to say about who you would put on your college football Mount Rushmore. And to help facilitate that, I want to bring in Producer Cat. Producer Cat, how you doing?
new animation. Isn't that so cool? I love it.
Yes.
Love it, love it, love it. I'm good. How are you?
I'm getting there. I'm always getting there. That's my phrase.
Yeah, that is your phrase. You say that every single time I talk to you. So basically you put out a question that asked, who are the 4 coaches that would be on your CFB Mount Rushmore? We got a lot of responses. What I tried to do was, you got a lot of the same answers that you put. So I tried to pick ones that would be different and also ones that would bring up, good talking points for us to discuss. So I want to start off with this first one from Ron, who said, Knute Rockne, Bud Wilkinson, Bear Bryant, Nick Saban.
There are 3 guys there, right, that were coaching before integration and a couple that went into integration. So I'm with that. Bear Bryant, I really thought about because there is no Nick Saban at Alabama. If there's no Bear Bryant at Alabama, even though he had got started doing what he was doing at A&M in Kentucky, I could get there. I don't have a problem with Bud Wilkinson. That 47 straight probably will never be broken again. I'd also add that it's pre-integration. The rest is kind of, you could keep it. Like, I would keep Knute Rockne here if for no other reason but showmanship. Like, I will tease producer Tyler, who we'll talk to a little bit later in the show, about how Knute Rockne would basically go up to people and say, so how much would it take for you to vote Notre Dame into, top 5 of your ballot? And then you had a bunch of guys that grew up in the Northeast that covered Notre Dame from the area that like Notre Dame. And this is why we end up talking about the teams that people think are popular as teams that we think are good. But it's really difficult to cut out Knute Rockne or Notre Dame from anything related to college football. I'm really going to ride for Ara Parseghian on this one, even if he did sit on the ball against Michigan State to try to win a national championship. But I'd let it slide.
I wanted to hear what you had to say about Bear Bryant not being on your list. I understand it. I think Nick Saban is a better college football coach than Bear Bryant. I'm sorry. I know that people will say, well, there would be no Nick if we didn't have Bear. And it's like, okay, maybe that's true. But also, Nick Saban has won more titles. So that is why Nick Saban, I think, is on the Rushmore.
I get that, right? The more titles and there's no Bear Bryant, but it's about how we remember Bear Bryant, right? It's, for instance, the Alabama-USC game goes down in history as, for at least Alabama, the one that convinced Alabama that they needed to integrate the football team. Sam Bam Cunningham has 4 touchdowns in the game. We talked about it a lot on this show and did a segment when he passed away last year. But there's also just this aura around Bear Bryant. Then I'll look at some of the teams that he coached. Not bad. You got Kenny Stable over there. You got Joe Namath over there. But I think we remember Bear Bryant positively because of how long it's been since we got to talk any Bear Bryant. And then there's that story about he passed away almost immediately after retiring from coaching football, which is to say that he was very much married to the game and the game meant a lot to him. That's got to mean something. Also, the Houndstooth hat, right? People get to wear those now and not get called out.
He is legendary. I don't want to say that he's not. I just think Nick Saban deserves it more than Bear Bryant, which is why I wanted to include that one. And I think you agree with me because you didn't put him on yours. But it's worth mentioning. So this next one we have is from Jason C. Johnson. So he agrees with a lot of yours. He said Barry Switzer, Tom Osborne, Jimmie Johnson, and Nick Saban.
Tom Osborne obviously did not make my Rushmore. The problem with this is a lot of teams in the 80s that probably should have won national championships, probably should have beat Bobby Bowden more than once. But you also have to remember the 1995 Nebraska team, for some people, is the greatest college football team ever. Full stop. Like, for me, it's going to be between 2018 Clemson, 2019 LSU, 95 Nebraska, and 45 Army. That's a wide range, and there's lots of different eras there. But what Tom Osborne means to Nebraska, forget about it, right? But does he himself belong on Rushmore? I don't think so, man. Why Jimmie Johnson is there, because I think he was a better coach and he means more to what college football is. And that's what Rushmore is for me, right? What did you culturally change about the sport? Why do people talk about you aside from winning football games, right? Jimmie Johnson made it cool to be flamboyant, made it cool to have a good time. Tom Osborne's not necessarily saying you can't have a good time, but you're definitely going to play Nebraska football while you're there. If anything, I think Tom Osborne is on the same stage as, say, Hayden Fry, or even today, I think the comp is Kirk Ferentz, someone for which you revere who is legendary in his community, is legendary at the program, but not necessarily someone that I would put on. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Kirk Ferentz is a good comp. I like that. So this last one is from Chris. Saban, Meyer, Bowden, Stoops. Only did coaches I was alive for, which I like. I
respect that. Yeah.
I respect that.
No, I respect that. It's difficult to argue about Bobby Bowden because he had a similar influence to Florida State that Jimmie Johnson had at Miami. But I would also continue to say that one of the reasons that Bobby Bowden got to coach like he did at Florida State is because Jimmie Johnson and Howard Schnellenberger before him were doing that at Miami, and that became cool. Only later did we see Florida finally adopt, right, with Steve Spurrier going, no, we're just going to throw the ball. We're going to run it up. If you don't like us running it up, stop us, right? Bob Stoops was defensive coordinator for him during that 3-year stretch where I think they get 32-5. What Bob Stoops means to Oklahoma is, again, on par with Tom Osborne, right? The reason that we don't talk about him the way we talk about Barry Switzer is obviously about the national championships, but a stat that I was reading just this morning as I was doing more of my preseason prep, Oklahoma is the winningest program by wins over the last 20 years, period. Like, it's the best. 215 wins in the last 20 years and not a single national title to show for it. That's the reason it's hard, right? It's difficult. Urban Meyer, and as far as winning percentage, I mean, forget about it. Like, it's him. Everywhere he went, he won football games. He won a national championship at Florida, won a national championship at Ohio State. Utah was nothing to sneeze at, right? And even Bowling Green was pretty doggone good when he was head coach there. I'm not going to put him on Rushmore because, frankly, I think Nick Saban's a better football coach, and I'm probably going to get yelled at for that. But what Nick Saban has done over the last 15 years, frankly, Urban Meyer did not, right? And then we talked about Saban. He's on there for me. Like that's how are we going to talk about Nick Saban 30 years from now, do you think, Kat? Like, that's what I keep thinking about as I know so much about him.
Are we going to talk about Nick Saban like we talk about Bear Bryant now?
I don't think so.
He is the best. It is not up for debate. Coming from a Tennessee fan, he is the best coach to ever do it. I think he's better than Belichick NFL-wise. Best coach ever.
Bill might actually say that you're right. Right?
He might.
They have a really cool friendship. Like, I really enjoy hearing how those guys interact. Like, I watched this Belichick Saban doc on HBO, like most people did. But my favorite part is the end. When they have all the camera guys, they're in Saban's office, the Belichick come out and they wanted to film it. And Saban, before they start talking, said, hey, can you guys give us the room? Can you leave? We haven't talked in a while. We just like to catch up. And I said, cool. But they kept like this corner camera running. And Saban comes out and says, so when you guys run cut, like, what do you, he immediately goes into football speak. Not how's your family doing? Not how are you doing? What are you doing when you guys run this play?
Yeah, they only have one thing on the brain. That's why they're the best. Yeah,
ridiculous.
That's why they're the best.
Thanks for watching this video. And remember, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other videos on the #1 ranked show YouTube channel.